because we are talking about the exit interview for Mercedes that she did with Little Black Book. I just got finished watching it. It was long, y'all. It was long, and so I couldn't watch it all in one sitting. I actually had to watch it in 4 parts. It was like 2 hours. I didn't really have a long time. You know, Mercedes is very cerebral. She's very illogical. She's got some emotion mixed in, but she's got a lot of logic to her, a lot of logic. And I think I had mentioned that as well in my recap reviews with not only Andre, but also with Anthony, that it's very apparent that Mercedes' logic wouldn't have been a good fit for Anthony, and it wouldn't have been a good fit for Andre. One, it wasn't a good fit with Anthony because what she spoke was saying, hey, you know, I like you, you're a nice person, but logically our lives don't fit together. And just like she said, she told him that. She told him straight up, she was honest with him and saying, hey, you know, my logic doesn't let me override anything that I know. Emotion isn't going to get overwritten by what my logic tells me. And this was one of the things that happened with Mercedes a lot in her dating on the show, that a lot of people felt like Mercedes friend zoned them. But she friend zoned them because the logic didn't add up. That's what she did. She friend zoned them because the logic didn't add up. And that's why I always said, even so for my last video I did with Andre, that Mercedes was never a viable option for him either. Not only because she wasn't interested in him, but he wasn't interested in her. Kojo was on here thinking that Andre really was interested in Mercedes. He wasn't, because like what Andre said was he was a good read of people. And what he knew about Mercedes is that she has way too much logic for him. In fact, the very thing that Andre needs, which a lot of what he needs are compliments. He needs lots of compliments, lots of gassing up. Come to find out, it's the very thing that Mark Anthony complains to her about, that she doesn't give him enough compliments. Because Mercedes doesn't need a lot of compliments herself, so she doesn't give them necessarily to the men she dates. I'm going to say, you know, most of the time I sit on here and tell people, you know, after I do little exit interviews, oh, he needs therapy. She needs therapy. She needs to do this. You know me, I'm always running my mouth talking about stuff like that. But this is going to be a little bit different with Mercedes, because I think Mercedes is this really a balanced person. She thinks out things. She's logical. But as an auntie out here who's much older than Mercedes, I am going to say some holes in her logic that I found. She's got some holes. I think she knows what she wants. I think she was willing to wait to get what she wants. I think that her standards are okay. I don't have any problem with any of that. Like I said, Mercedes was one of my favorites. She still is one of my favorites. And it was a very different type of interview, because a lot of the interviews we do on these exit interviews, we see how crazy people are. When Mercedes was here, you hear this just, you know, a bunch of sanity. It's all sane talk, sanity. She just seems like a very normal person. But there were a couple of things I picked up on with Mercedes that led me to believe that although Mercedes has a good handle on herself, she has a good handle on what her morals are, what her standards are, and everything like that. I think what Mercedes doesn't do is she doesn't give enough, I want to say actually, what would I call the word? She needs a little bit more of a healthy respect for the competition and other people. And when I say a healthy respect, I think she has this sort of lackadaisical attitude that if you're for me, you'll come to me. Kind of when she was dealing with Mark Anthony, she really wasn't bothered by Jeffrey, as she says. I was never really bothered by Jeffrey because, you know what, I think Mark Anthony should be allowed to explore what he did with Jeffrey. I mean, we all understand that. Of course, he should be allowed to explore it. But what Mercedes goes to is she goes to this other level, which says, I'm not going to compete for a man. I don't think you should compete with a man like that, Mercedes, because I can't really, that's what I said, I can't really get on her. But I'm going to say this. Where I think she was wrong with Jeffrey and Mark Anthony is she believed that Mark Anthony fully vetted Jeffrey, and then what he did was he decided that he would choose her. And that's where I differ with Mercedes. One of the things Mercedes said was that Jeffrey was his number two. And I actually don't necessarily still believe that. Mercedes also said that she was very adamant about not dating off camera. And she feels it worked for her because she said a lot of people broke the rules. They dated off camera. And it sounds like Jeffrey and Mark Anthony dated off camera. And she says, look at me now. I'm still best friends with Mark Anthony and he's one of my best friends. And so Jeffrey's relationship didn't last, but look at mine. But one thing I think she's forgetting about is that we saw all those things with Mark Anthony and Mercedes. And although Mercedes can sit here and tell us that she wasn't bothered by it, because I don't think she was bothered by it. That's what I'm saying. I don't think she was bothered by it. She wasn't bothered by it. I think where she's dismissing it too soon is that it didn't mean something. There's the difference. I'm not telling her to be bothered by it. I'm not telling her to be insecure about it. But what I'm telling her is she's underestimating the competition of Jeffrey and a lot of women. And this is actually what I see going on in her life with her relationships. The ones she mentioned, not all of them, but the ones she mentioned. The truth of the matter is, I'm not fully convinced that Mark Anthony wouldn't have done something with Jeffrey towards the end. I'm not fully convinced. It was actually Jeffrey who let Mark Anthony go. Mercedes is trying to tell us that it was Mark Anthony who let Jeffrey go, and I'm not convinced of that. I saw Mark Anthony's eyes. I saw Mark Anthony's heart open for Jeffrey. And I believe that he was in it more than Mercedes believes. And I believe Mercedes is still thinking that she was clearly the number one. And I'm still not convinced of it. Because I think what Mercedes is underestimating when I say she doesn't have a healthy respect for the competition, which are other women, is I think she underestimates how important it is for men's egos to be stroked. I really do. I think she underestimates. I think she underestimates the power of it. And as a result, I don't think she understood how strong of a power Mark Anthony had a draw towards Jeffrey, because that's what Jeffrey did. Jeffrey stroked his ego. And the reason why I know this is a problem in Mercedes' life, because she mentioned it in a lot of her significant relationships. It looks like Mercedes has had a lot of men that cheated on her. A lot. She talked about her college boyfriend. He cheated on her. She talked about another significant relationship she just had maybe in 2020. Sounds like he cheated on her. And now we find out that, and even that soothsayer, remember the soothsayer said that she was enthralled in a throuple, or not a throuple, a threesome, or whatever you want to call it, a triangle, a love triangle. I think that's what she called a love triangle. Remember that soothsayer said that about Mercedes? And she goes, wow, I was. I think what Mercedes does is, let me tell you, Mercedes can attract a lot of men. She's beautiful, she's smart, she's intelligent, she's got a good head on her shoulder. She doesn't have any screaming red flags. She doesn't have any sirens. She doesn't have any of that. I think Mercedes attracts really, really like nice caliber men. She says she doesn't have a type, but I don't believe that either. Because Mercedes says she likes some medium ugly. She doesn't like them too good looking. And I think she's come to that conclusion because she says she used to have a type. I think she's come to that conclusion because what she realized was the real pretty man, the real good looking men tend to have a lot of women that want them. And as a result, she loses those real good men to those women because those women are coming to compete. Those women are coming to compete. They're not underestimating her. And they're coming full throttle, and she loses out to the women because Mercedes is kind of lackadaisical. She really is. She's kind of like, if it's for me, it's going to be for me. She's the girl that, sort of leaves her house open and not locked. And people go, you're not going to lock your doors. And she says, no, I'm not really worried about anything because if they steal anything, I can just replace it. That's what she thinks. I'm not going to live in paranoia. I'm not always going to be worrying about somebody coming to my house and robbing me. I'm just going to leave the door open. I'm just going to leave it unlocked. Because I have a lot of good things in my life. Good things come to me. So if someone breaks into my house and steals something from me, it's not going to be that big of a deal. I'll just replace it. That's Mercedes in dating. Mercedes has never had a problem attracting men. She's not thirsty because she's had the love and attention from not only her main father, but even a stepfather. She's had love and attention from her mother. She's come from a family in which she has always been loved, in which she's always been protected, in which she's always had this sort of cushiony space to live. So she's not entering the world damaged and bruised and cautious and scared and, a whole lot of trauma. She's coming in the world a confident, full-on lady. But also as a result of that, she hasn't learned a healthy respect of the competition. And what I believe happens to Mercedes is she does attract some very nice men. But I think this part where she doesn't seem like she thinks it's a big problem, where she doesn't think that she needs to compliment men, where she doesn't think she needs to rub their ego, I think those men get lured away. I think they get lured away. I think they get lured away by other women who decide, I'm willing to step up more than Mercedes. And I think what men will always have for Mercedes, they will always respect her. They'll always like her. They'll always care for her. But the thing about men, ladies, let me tell you, their egos are as big as the ocean. They're big. Most men's egos are really, really big. And so I think what Mercedes is waiting for, she's waiting for a man who doesn't need all that ego stroking, and the man that won't be lured away by a woman who does ego stroking. And I actually think it's a bad idea. I hate to say it. I think it's a bad idea. I think Mercedes is the better woman. More than likely, if you stack her up against another woman, I think she's probably the better woman. I think she's kind. I think she's caring. I think it's like she sees good in everyone. I think she's balanced. I think she's got this emotional side, but she's also got this other side to her that's logical. I really do see all these things. But I think where she's going to lose, she might even lose the man she really wants. I'm not talking about men she doesn't want. I'm talking about losing a man you actually want. That she'll lose him to another woman who decides, I may not have everything that Mercedes has. I may not have the good looks. I may not have the good body. I may not have the smarts. I may not have the wherewithal. But what I do for this man is how I make him feel. And I think she is undercounting that, and she undercounted that with Jeffrey. See, she didn't think there was any danger with Mark Anthony running over here behind Jeffrey because she thought, like we all did, here's Jeffrey over here with 2 kids or 3 kids by 2 baby daddies. Jeffrey doesn't have what I have, so I don't mind if Mark Anthony goes over there and sniffs around because he's gonna come right back to where I am, because what he's gonna realize intellectually is that I'm a much better woman than Jeffrey. Well, what she's underestimating is that that's not how men make decisions all the time. Every man's not that logical. A lot of men are really suckers for being praised. And she says Mark Anthony tries to tell her all the time, gas me up, tell me something nice. And from what she says, she doesn't really put much effort towards it. She doesn't, because she says it's not her love language. She decides that maybe she doesn't want to love Mark Anthony the way her love language is. And I think she doesn't just do it with Mark Anthony. I think she does it with all her men. And I think that probably contributes to her getting cheated on a lot. She really mentioned 3 significant relationships. This last one during COVID 2020, I even think that it must have been somebody famous or an athlete or something. Even when in college, she dated an athlete. She dated the most popular guy. She says she doesn't have a type, but I'm telling you, she says she doesn't have a type, but I'm telling you, Mercedes does have a type. She may not go for the fine man, the pretty man, like she says, mean him ugly, but she goes for the popular man. She absolutely does. She likes a big prize. She loves a big prize because the guy in college, she mentioned, was a very popular person in college. I think he was a football player or something, but he was one of the most popular men on campus. This last guy she talked about, she went with in COVID. They lived together. I think he was pretty popular. I think he might have been famous. She tried to allude to it. I think he might have been famous. And then, of course, Mark Anthony was a prize on the show. He was the most handsome man on the show. In fact, Mark Anthony could have been labeled the most handsome on all the Ready to Love shows. Be honest with you, there's a lot of women who think that. So Mercedes says she doesn't have a type, but she does have a type. She likes the most popular men. She likes the most desirable men. She likes men that other women want as well. Well, if you're going to like men that other women want as well, then you're also going to have to respect the game of other women. You're going to have to respect the game that a lot of women know how to appeal to the ego of a man. And it's important. And those women who may not have everything else that Mercedes has, those women can beat out Mercedes. And I don't think she knows that. I don't think she knows that women who cater to a man's ego can beat out her with a man. And she may say to me, if she heard me, she would say, I don't care, then that's not a man I want. That's fine. That's absolutely fine. You're right about that. But she should know that there's a consequence. And I'm going to say this. being much older than Mercedes, I'm also going to tell you that this is also a pattern young women get into around Mercedes' age. When there are women who are good looking and they're used to attracting men and they're young, they're in their 20s and their late 30s, that is around the time when you have a lot of men looking for you. Because that's around the time that men actually start vetting women for marriage and family. And they eventually will choose a woman, or a woman will choose them and trap that man. And let me hear me out, people. Mercedes is around that age of men. I'm going to tell you what happens because I'm older and I've seen these patterns happen. That around this age of 30, that's the age a lot of women want to get married. That's the age a lot of women want to have kids. That's the age when a lot of women really, really, really do start competing because they're ready to settle down. And those men who are around 32, they become the target of a lot of women. A lot of women who want to have families. And I don't mean it maliciously. It's just that that's around the age that a lot of women want to settle down and get married. They might have finished their schooling. They're ready to have a family. They're around 28, 29, 30. If you have a woman like Mercedes over here who doesn't realize she really is in competition for those men, for these other women, what Mercedes can do is she can say, well, I'm not going to put in that much effort because another one will come along later. If he doesn't choose me, no big deal. She doesn't put in much effort. She wants her resume to speak for itself. It's almost like a person who says, I just want to come to the job interview, show up, show my resume, but I don't really want to charm you in the interview. Okay. And so with a lot of women, they do the opposite. Their resume isn't as strong, but they come in the interview and they knock the interview out the park and they get the job. And so Mercedes said, well, that's okay. That's okay. I don't want that man. So typically what happened to some women like Mercedes, I've seen it, people. I've seen what happens to very confident women like Mercedes who really have it together and how they don't take the dating thing seriously at this age. And they think, well, you know what? When it comes my way, I'll come my way. And if he's for me, he's for me. But they don't put a lot of effort and they don't appeal to the ego of a man. When they get around like about 34, 35, a lot of those men around 30, 32, they start getting snapped up. They start having babies with other women. They start doing a lot of things. So even if they get married, those men have to get divorced or they have kids. By the time they come back around, they're around 38, 39. And by then, those men have scars on them too. Unfortunately, they have scars. You know, they talk a lot about women with scars. They talk a lot about women who, you know, how many bodies does a woman have? She's dated a lot of men. A lot of men have run through her. They always talk about the scars of women in the dating world. But there's not a lot of attention paid to the scars of men. And I'm going to tell you, there are a lot of men who have scars from dating. There are a lot of men who want to get married. They get married to the wrong woman around 28, 29, 30. And by the time they come back on the dating market in their late 30s or the early 40s, they have scars from those women. I'm going to tell you, Jeffrey's baby daddies more than likely have scars from her. They more than likely have scars from her. So Mercedes, when she doesn't put a lot of effort into really looking at men and saying, you know what? I understand that this man that I like is a man that a lot of women would want. And if a man really does need his ego stroked, and this is a man I want to be with, why wouldn't you do it, Mercedes? Why wouldn't you do it? I think she's going to have to give a little bit more effort than that, because if she doesn't do it, what's going to end up happening is she'll still be out here. Those men will get snapped up by other women because they're going to do the work. There are women who are going to do the work. They're going to put in the effort. They're going to be the Jeffreys of the world. They're going to tell that man everything they want to hear. They're going to really gas him up. Everything that Mark Anthony is saying. Mark Anthony was ready and primed for what Jeffrey was dishing out. He was ready and primed for it. He was ready and primed for it. Even though Mercedes is the better woman, I'm telling you, this is a scenario of even though you're the better woman, even though you're more qualified for the job, hear me out. You're more qualified for the job. You're the better long-term employee. You're all that. You're more qualified. You're the better long-term employee. Somebody else comes in the interview and they snatch the interview from you because you know what they did? They charmed the pants off those people in the interview. They charmed the pants. And even when they get on the job, maybe they still not as smart as you, but guess what? Now they're in the job and now that employer will work with them. And you're on the sideline saying, wow, why didn't I get the job? I'm more qualified. I'm a better woman. I'm all these things. Mercedes better start respecting her competition a little bit more. If there's anything I heard in this interview, I heard a little bit of a lack of respect for the way things work out here in dating. I think her standards for herself are fine. There's really nothing that I had any problem with what Mercedes says. I still really do love Mercedes. But what I don't want to see happen in Mercedes is her believing that everybody operates according to the way she operates. And that's kind of what I hear. I'm telling you, it's like the person saying, I don't want to lock up my house. I don't really need to worry about those types of things, because if anybody comes and steal it, I can just go get another one. And I think that's how she thinks of men. I think she thinks of men as in no big deal. If it doesn't work out, I can just go get another one. And that's what all the men said about her, that she threw a lot of men back in the sea. Am I saying she should have chosen any of these men? No. Am I saying were any of these men even a good fit for her? No, I don't think that they were. But I don't think it's uncommon for her to do this, period. She likes popular men. All the men she ran down as her significant relationships were popular men. They were popular men, whether they were medium ugly or not. They were popular. For some reason, they were popular, which means she was in competition with other women. In fact, she recounted the story in college that not only did her college boyfriend, which she was with for 3 years, cheat on her, the woman that he cheated on with threw it up in her face. So she said, not only did I have to deal with the embarrassment of him cheating, I had to deal with the embarrassment of the woman purposely throwing in my face. It actually reminds me of Melody Holt and Coleslaw. It's kind of like she described a Coleslaw situation where the mistress woman was so disrespectful that she was actually coming in Mercedes' face. And the reason why the mistress did that to Mercedes, I'm gonna tell you why. It's the same reason why Coleslaw did it to Melody, was because what Coleslaw realized about Melody Holt was she was the better woman. She was the better overall woman. She was the better overall woman, hands down. And what Coleslaw wanted to do was she wanted to gloat in the face of Melody. She wanted to gloat in the face of Melody. And that same scenario is what Mercedes was describing with the woman that her boyfriend cheated with. Because what women also recognize about Mercedes is she's a well put together woman. She's stiff competition for any kind of woman. And a lot of women who are insecure, what they will do is they will look to defeat her. They will come for the man of Mercedes because in a lot of ways, not only are they getting the man, but they're also beating Mercedes. And that's what Coleslaw was with Melody. Not only did Coleslaw want to be with Martell, she really actually wanted to beat Melody. That's why she's still obsessed with her now to this day. And what I'm saying is women like Melody Holtz of the world, women like Mercedes, they are wonderful women, but they need to also be very aware of what's out here in the world. And so she can't underestimate these women. She can't underestimate the competition. I'm not talking about that's what Melody did with Coleslaw. I'm not saying that at all. I don't want no millimeters. What's her fan club called? No millimeters be coming down to my comments. Please don't. But what I'm saying about Mercedes is I think she underestimates this part about men. And it's not just insecure men who want this type of validation. It's not just insecure men who want this type of stroking. It really isn't. It really is all men, women. I hate to say it. It's all men. Different men need more than others. The Andres of the world needed a lot more, but they all need it. Anthony even needed it. That's why Anthony was kind of lackadaisical in his pursuit. He needed it. So there's different levels in which the men need it, but there's not a man around who doesn't need it. So when I hear Mercedes say that Mark Anthony has told her over and over again, please give me a compliment. It's like pulling strings. It's like it's so hard to get a compliment out of you. That tells me that's a problem. That's a problem. And that's going to be a problem with any relationship she's in. And she better learn how to do it. Because at one time, there is going to come around a man she wants, right? One time or another, there's going to be a man that comes around that she does want. Not one that she's willing to throw away. It's one that she wants. And if she doesn't learn how to stroke the ego of a man now, when that man comes around, the one that she wants, she won't know how to do it. And I don't want to hear anything about, well, when that man comes, I'll do it with him. I'll learn how to do it. Nope, that's not how you do it. Practice makes perfect. You don't learn how to do something when the job is in front of you. You learn how to do it beforehand. So when the job is given to you, you already know how to do it. She better learn to practice it with the Mark Anthony, since he's just a friend with benefits. She better start practicing with him. So that way it'll be in her spirit. It'll be in her soul. Okay. She needs to look at a lot of these women who have this strong, I don't know, I did this other video on Put a Ring on It. There's a girl on Put a Ring on It. Her name is Joya. She's very good at it also. There's certain women that are very good. I always say Jeffrey was very good, but Jeffrey was fake. Jeffrey was very good at it. Women who are logical and emotional, you need to perfect this. This part you need to perfect. You may have everything else going around. You may be a nice person. You may be spiritual. You may come from a nice family background. You may be have your education. Your career is on point. Everything's on point. But one of the things you don't know how to do is stroke a man's ego. And I'm telling you, you will lose out to a lesser woman all the time, many of the times, if you don't know how to do that. All this other stuff on your resume won't mean a thing if you can't do this thing as well. Mercedes needs to put some time and effort into that. She really does. That's really my only advice for her. I think she's a wonderful person. I loved her. She was one of my favorites. I still think she's one of my favorites. But this is the area of all the things I saw. This is the area where I think she needs to do some work. Anyway, that's it, y'all. I'll talk to you later. Bye.